Hello. I'm just setting some things up here. Today I'm gonna be sewing up somebody else's pattern. So I never pattern tested for anybody else before, but this lady was doing teen patterns, and since I have a 14-year-old, I thought, well, that's kind of fun, and I'll try to see how other people sew things. So I'm pattern testing a hooded shirt for my 14-year-old. And it's got a stripe down the side and a stripe up the back of the hood. It's not just a basic hooded shirt, but I thought that that'd be something fun to sew for sort of a sew along today. And if anybody has anything that they want me to work on or any questions that you have, just, hit me up. I'm right here. I'll be looking up, fairly frequently to make sure that nobody has any questions. But I'm just going to share what I have right here. So I have the hooded pieces. It's got a inner hood and an outer hood. And I used a matching gray for a liner, and I got my fabrics from my friend at Sewery. So here's my inner hood piece and my outer hood piece, and then a stripe up the back, and since liner, it's all just one color. And then for the outside, I have this coordinated stripe and toothless. I thought that was good, from How to Train Your Dragon. So I've got the inner and the outer piece for that. And I'm thinking I'll sew the hood first, and then sew the body, and then attach them. But I'm going to sew the body and leave it flat while attaching the hood, because I think that that's a little more logical. One of the other pattern testers wanted to do it the same way, and I think it makes a lot more sense to do it that way. So we're going to do our two hood pieces, and then sew them together. And then there's the shirt body. So there's going to be a stripe down the arm. And so I've got a bunch of little sort of sectioned pieces. It's not all one piece like the way that I do my, easy little kid dresses. It's a little bit different. And sometimes when you do shirts too, you can, section out the front. Don't be afraid to, piece together fabric if you don't have enough of any one piece. I often get these panels that are kid size, but I want to put them on adult size shirts. And what I'll do is I'll, cut a piece at the top, cut two pieces down the side, and then just kind of fit in I don't know what you would call that, but put in a piece together a piece of whatever, print or panel you want in the middle or off to the side. I did one once that had like a diagonal down the side, and it's a good way to use up scraps if you don't have a big enough piece for an adult size, shirt or whatever, or dress. But I have enough of this one, which is why I chose this, because I need to do it just like her pattern calls for. So this is the front chest piece. And then I have my two front sleeve pieces. And since the sleeves are in three pieces because they have a stripe down the side, we're going to be piecing that together flat rather than around the shoulder like we usually do. So this will be piecing to here, and then this will be piecing to the other side, and then we'll just serge up the arm there. And we can top stitch if we want, but I don't think I'm going to. It's optional. She writes that it's optional in her pattern. And the same thing for the front piece. And then once I have the front and back separately assembled, we're going to put stripes down from the shoulder down to the wrist on like the top of the shoulder. So that'll be kind of neat. I've got this accent black and white or black and gray stripe here. It would have been cool if I had one that had the yellow too, but I don't. So this is close enough. I'm just, using things that I had left over from when my kids were little, so hopefully my 14-year-old won't be too embarrassed to wear toothless, but he can always just wear it around the house. So yeah, let's get to assembling, huh? I'm gonna put the hood together first, like I said, and I'm just gonna serge. And these are all pre-shrunk and ironed a little bit to get the wrinkles out. They were super wrinkly. And they're a little curled because they're a very thin kind of jersey knit, so. But yeah, if you guys have any questions or you want me to sew something else, let me know. This is just what I was going to be working on today anyway, so I figured it was a good opportunity. Make sure that the sides are facing correctly. I've never pattern tested for somebody else before, so I really don't want to mess it up. Like, I would normally assemble things kind of my own way, but I have to do it the way that, that she wants done for her pattern, so I really don't want to mess it up. And when you're serging with a thin, like, super stretchy jersey like this, you just want to go really slow. You don't want to pull. You want to make sure that you're tensions on your knobs are very even, and for mine that's kind of 3 across the board, but I'm not sure what I think for thicker fabrics it goes, you know, differently. But I think that this should work. And you can always test it on a scrap piece, but my machine's pretty consistent. And I'm just going to clip it around a little bit, making sure that it's relaxed. And basically we're going to sew both the inside and the outside pieces of the lined hood like you would be sewing, you know, something facing with all its faces toward each other, and then they're going to then be sewn and turned. And then I'm going to serge it onto the neck of the shirt after the shirt's done. And this isn't a super exciting sew. I'll probably edit this one down quite a bit. I just wanted to be here in case people had questions that they wanted to ask, or if there's something else somebody else wanted to do, or just, you know, I'm going to be sewing anyway, so I may as well talk to myself and be on the stream. Sort of a regular opportunity. I might not be streaming next Wednesday. It's going to be spring break for my kids, and my son and I are going on a little road trip. And so I might do a short stream. I'm going to have my computer with me anyway, but I probably won't have great internet, although not that it's that great here. But I might still pop in and say hello, but don't be worried if, you know, or anything if I'm not there. I'll post on my Discord what my plans are at that point to let people know. Also, if anybody's had a chance to try sewing up the diaper pod or to make themselves a little duffel in that style, let me know. Let me know, you know, if there's anything that needs to be explained a little better or needs more images of. I can definitely do that. I'm going to have my computer with me so I can change digital files pretty easily. Doesn't quite line up. I wonder if I measured wrong. It's gonna be a little loud. My serge is a little loud. I'm gonna go much slower than I normally would, just because since this is somebody else's pattern test, I don't want to make any mistakes. It's not necessarily the order that I usually do things in. I'm usually more of an improviser. Anybody's just joining us, I'm making a teen size hooded shirt. It's sort of like a men's medium based on my son's sizes, but a little thinner, a little more gangly for being a teen. I think it's interesting to have separate teen sizes. So there's the one side of the hood, and then we're just going to do the same thing to the other hood piece. And clip that down, make sure I'm not messing anything up. I do hoods a lot of times where they're just 2 pieces, and then around the back, and I will make, when it's just 2 pieces, I will make a little sharper cut at the back and a little more over the front, but since she has this middle piece, I think it gets rid of that need for that. I've never made one this way before, so it's interesting. It's an interesting, you know, prospect. I think I might have actually sewn this backwards. I think I sewed on the wrong... I did. Okay then. Mistakes right away. Yay me. It's hard to tell with this jersey which way is front and which way is back. Maybe since it's the liner, I'll just leave it backwards. Yeah, I'm not gonna worry about it this time. I did do it backwards though. I was looking to see if I could see the lines, and I guess my lighting in here is not good enough. Or I'm just nervous because I'm on camera. So we'll be sewing it not quite normal, but it won't matter. It's just the lining piece anyway. I'll be much more careful with the print, obviously. I don't know if you can hear that, but my laundry is calling me. I love the singing washers and dryers. It's no longer just the buzz like it used to be. I find it funny how much slower I go when I sew on camera. And you'd think it would make me make less mistakes, but if anything, it's the other way around. I make more mistakes. Okay. Let's do the other side. So there's the inner part of the hood. And then we'll do the print part now. And this will be much easier to see which side is inside and the outside. for the top piece here, you could also top stitch it. I probably will do that after I finish putting it together, just to make it look a little more clean. I'm actually really glad I had gray and black thread. I think it'll look really nice with those accents. I've had this fabric forever, and I just have never had a use for it, but it was so cute, and I got such a good deal on it. I think I was gonna make pajamas out of it when my kids were little, and I just never, they were never interested, I think, in this print. I should have just made myself something, honestly. But now I have it to use for this, so that's cool. I didn't have to buy anything new. I don't like buying new fabrics for testers because you never know, like for myself or for other people, you never know if it's going to work out well, if you're going to get a chance to wear it, and you know, you don't want to waste something that you paid money for. At least I don't. I often find myself kind of making changes along the way if things aren't going exactly how I thought they would go, just to make sure that something's going to end up usable. Okay, so what we have here is we have our sort of outside piece with our accent, the back of the hood. And I'm going to be top stitching that since it's the outside piece, but I'm not going to bother with the inside piece. And then we have the inner piece. And then what we're going to do after I top stitch is we're going to fit them together kind of like, you know, anything that you would turn in top stitch. We're going to put them with the seams out, faces in, match up the seam lines there at the top, and then just sew around and then turn through the bottom, you know, where the opening is, and you'll end up with a nice finished, you know, no seams showing, and then you can just top stitch around that front brim. And she says to put twill tape there, but I don't have a matching twill tape. So I was kind of thinking, like, do I want to put a non-matching twill and have it inside on the seam allowance, and then when I turn it, it'll give that durability, or do I just leave it without twill and rely on the thickness of the serging for the durability? And I think I'll decide what to do when I get to that point. But there's always modifications. You don't ever have to do something exactly how, you know, it says. As long as it works for you, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to switch to my sewing machine and do a little bit of top stitching since I want this to turn out really finished looking and nice so that my, you know, kid actually wears it. I think I probably for myself wouldn't bother. And my serger and sewing machine is the same brand, so I use the same pedal when I sit here at the desk. But when I'm sewing on my own, I turn to the side and I have two plugs so that I can do one and then move to the other. But since, you know, camera setup, I just have them set up the same. I'm just gonna fold my serge in, and honestly, like, you could iron this and make it a little more clean, but I'm not gonna do that much. And I'm just gonna fold it toward the stripe side, toward the accent side, not toward the body side. And I'm going to just sort of loosely sew that down, just to lay it flat, make it look a little more finished. You could use a double needle or you could cover stitch it. That would also be, you know, totally awesome way of doing it. I'm being super lazy though. I just use the side of my petal as my guide, or the side of my foot, I mean, as my guide. And since it's a stretchy fabric, you don't want to pull it all. You want to let your feed dogs and your machine guide it. And then once you wash and dry, or even if you iron afterwards, that'll get rid of any sort of puckering. Sometimes there's a little bit. But I've never had any that just didn't go away after washing and drying a little bit. And this is totally an optional step. I'm just adding this in because I thought it would look nice. And like I mentioned before, if some of you are tuning in now, I go a lot slower when I'm sewing my camera and also when I'm testing somebody else's pattern. Because I don't want to make silly mistakes, but I think that I end up actually making more silly mistakes because I'm nervous on camera. But it would probably be even worse if I didn't, so. When I'm doing my own thing, I kind of whip right through things, and you know, mistakes or not, it doesn't matter. So you can see it's just top stitched. And I'm using gray thread because I'm inside the gray stripe there. I thought that that would work really nice. And the same thing on the other side. And this is just an aesthetic choice. This isn't necessary for structure. A cover stitch would look really cool if you have a cover stitch machine. So we have our little top stitched outer piece, and I'm not going to worry about the inner piece. You can see how that looks. It's a little ripply, grabbed a little bit, but like I said, once it washes and dries, that'll totally relax. Nice and lined up on the back. I think that'll look cool. And now let's put our faces toward each other, huh? And just line up our seam points. And then I like to clip, but you could pin. So the woman who is designing this, I'll publish what pattern it is when it's finalized and when she has it available. But the woman who's making it is making like 3 different shapes for like the super string bean kids and like the more average kids and for the stockier kids. So it's a pretty elaborate pattern. And you know, we had to give like measurement sizes for our kids, and I had to give like my son's chest size and all that and his height. He's more on the tall side of like the average build for it, and you know, she told us which ones to sew and any modifications to make with it, and then she's, you know, making changes to like necklines and stuff with each step. And this is the second phase, like the phase 2 of the pattern. We already had to sew something for phase 1. And the phase 1 was just a really basic t-shirt just to get fit. It's interesting. I've never done like pattern sales, so I've never done that whole, you know, tester phase. Like basically if you take my patterns and you do them, what you get is what you get. And I'll make changes for you, but you're not paying, so I'm not making the effort to make everything perfect before and like 3 different sizes and all that. But I'd never used a paid, you know, like non-commercial pattern. I'd really never used a paid pattern at all. But when I was a kid, I used to do some like, you know, store-bought patterns. But as an adult in garment sewing, I've never used a pattern. So it's really a fascinating process to like have somebody doing their pattern testing and all the all the steps they go to do it. It's a long process. Those ladies, you know, or men, those people who make them really do their work usually. I don't think there's that many people that go into that without really, you know, putting in the work and the time to try to make it the best thing they can. So there's one side. Make sure the other side lines up too. And this is actually the first hooded shirt I've ever made. I've made hoodies before, and I've made like hooded capes and you know, other hooded things before. I've never made a hooded jacket, and I've never made a hooded shirt. So it's not any different really than making a hoodie, but it's kind of a neat thing. Something different to have in the collection, right? And this shirt had a bunch of different options. It had like regular shirt, it had regular long sleeve, it had stripe, short sleeve, stripe, long sleeve. And so I chose to do the hood with the accent stripe because I thought that was neat with the fabrics that I had. That was it. I think I'm going to stop at 3 today, no matter what point I've gotten to, because I need to do some stuff around the yard. I need to clean out the chicken coop. Yay, fun. So I'm going to wait till it's too late for that. Switch back to my serger. This is such a thin jersey on the inner, it's curling a lot. I didn't do my glue stick trick. Okay. And for those of you that are new, the glue stick trick for me is I use washable glue stick to sort of adhere edges before I serge or sew, depending on the material that I'm using, just because it kind of gives it some stickiness, holds together, stops the curling, and it's washable, so it washes right out when you're done. But you want to put it on very thin because you don't want to gum up your machine or your needle. It's best to put it in a spot where you're not going to be having actual needles, like at the very, very edges or whatever. Make sure these line up. Go really slow through this thicker seam point here. Make sure it's folded the right way. You can see that my serger tension is like super flat and relaxed. Okay, so we've gone around, and now we're just going to turn through the bottom. And if you wanted to iron now and press it, you could. I'm sure that would be ideal. If I had an iron all set up or I wanted to wait in between steps, this would be a good place to do that. Sort of fold your seam really nice and flat and iron it down. But I'm just going to clip right now, kind of get that same effect, but without the time. And then I'm going to go and top stitch over that edge. I could have put in a piece of twill tape there, but I don't think I'm going to. I think it's durable enough. She had to put it on the inside edge, and people were using a matching, like if I had gray twill tape, like along that. But I think that I'd rather have it hidden. But it was an optional step, so I'm allowed to change it because it was an optional step, so I don't have to do it that way. I didn't want to buy fabric, like I said. Another cool thing about pattern testing online is that this lady's in the UK and I'm in the US and I can still do it. And there were testers in Asia and like all over with the whole, you know, the world economy, the world internet. You can watch people from all over, you can collaborate with people from all over, and I just absolutely love that. The preemie diaper pattern I made. I saw a woman copying, using my pattern, even admitting to it at first, and not understanding why the weights were what they are on my preemie pattern. And the reason is because it was a requested pattern. In the US, babies can't go home before like 4 or 5 pounds because of car seat laws and whatnot, even if they're breathing on their own and stuff. But in other countries, that's not the case. So a woman in an Asian country, or maybe it was Indonesia, I'm not sure. It's been so many years. But a woman in another country contacted me and said that the babies there can go home at 3 pounds as long as they're breathing well and either have a feeding tube or are eating on their own. And so she was, I think fostering much smaller babies than most preemie patterns would go to. So like in the US, you won't really find anything smaller than 4.5. So I made a size 1 and a size 2 option in the preemie pattern and I got input on how the fit was and stuff from her. Because that's, that's what's needed in some places. You need something smaller. So, we basically made a bunch of contours, and then, really quick sews for the really tiny preemies. But if you want to have like a nice photo picture, like a nicer diaper or something like that, or cover pattern. That's why I had the size 1s, and the other woman who released, her version, which was exactly mine, she didn't know the reason. So people were commenting on her post saying things like, well, kids can't come home that early anyway. And it's like, well, yeah, in the US, but it's not, my patterns aren't for people just in the US, right? I want people from everywhere. And sadly, I don't speak another language besides English and a little bit of Spanish because I'm from San Diego. But because I don't speak a lot of languages, Blogger translates now, which is really cool. But when I first started, it didn't. And YouTube has the captions option, and you just say what language you're speaking, and then it has the ability to translate as well, which is so, so cool. I love the accessibility options these days. Rapid translations. There's even those, apps that sign translate. They've been around for a decade plus now. I remember going to Europe 15 years ago and having one of those phone apps, even then, that you could point at something and it would take a while back then, but could translate signs. That was so helpful. So that was my goal with the free patterns, was not just for, people in the US. And that's why while I'm redoing them, I'm adding centimeter guides as well, because I never did before, because my software just had inch grids and stuff, and I wasn't spending the time to change them. But now that I'm going back and reworking them, I'm trying to make them a little more accessible, along with the projector options and such. And if you can think of something that would make them even more accessible, just let me know. I really, really, that's my goal, is to make them sort of accessible for everybody. Okay, so at this point, you've got your hood. It's got both the inner lining, the hidden seams, and the outer. And then I'm just going to top stitch around the edge here, because I don't have the matching twill tape. And I've got the little top stitched top here. And then that'll get set aside while I work on the body, which I probably will do off stream, because I want to go and do some stuff while it's still daytime. And I will finish the hood at least. And the shirt, you could put this hood onto any shirt, right? You could even add it to, actually, you could even take this hood, or take a hood and make a hood, and cut off the neckline of a t-shirt, just really carefully so you don't take off extra, and add a hood to a shirt. So, my kid loves hooded shirts. He really doesn't like shirts without hoods. I used to add hoods to sweatshirts. It was hard to find, or actually I even added a hood to a jacket once. We found a winter coat that didn't have a hood, but he really liked the coat. And we added the hood from a different coat onto that coat. So you can always, mix and match. I love, what they call upcycling. I love taking something and sort of turning it into something else. It's a really great way to, get the most out of your clothes, or out of hand-me-downs or whatever. I really like using one thing and sort of turning it into something else, something that you might find more useful or whatever. Oh, at this step too, if you wanted to do a hood and a sweatshirt, and you had a grommet machine, or you wanted to make a buttonhole on the outside, you could sew a second seam further in and run a drawstring through the edge. You would do that since it's the two lined layers. You could easily just make, a casing, and do a buttonhole on one of them, and run the drawstrings. What are the names of them called? The end is a name. Anyway, you could make your own drawstring either with a knot or with an end piece on it. I've even seen elasticized ones with toggles and stuff. Those are fun. But yeah, if any of you ever came across like a pattern and you wanted to change it up a little bit and you needed some help on how to do that, let me know. Or if you came across a really cool way to upcycle something that you thought was creative, let the community know, right? Unless you want to, sell a pattern, obviously. And I did want to say I was talking with one of the people in my Discord before I was on Discord with her about that I'm happy to make patterns for other people who sell their garments. Like if you don't know how to do the digital part and you've got a paper pattern that you use and works really well and you can write the instructions but don't know how to do the digital part, join my Discord and we'll help you make the pattern. Like you can make some passive income, you can sell it. I won't claim ownership. Like anything that I've made patterns for other people and I don't post those for download. They're saved in a separate folder on my computer. They're, I can give the original files to whoever it is. I'm happy to help people make their own patterns, whether it's for sale or to keep just for records, whatever you'd like. It's your pattern, right? It's not mine, so you get to do whatever you want with it. Think of it like the art is the artist's, right? Not the printer company that prints up the canvases or whatever. I was going really slow over the really thick spots there. It was catching a little bit, so I was trying to not. Since I'm not using a walking foot or anything, I'm just being lazy. So there we've got our hood for a hooded shirt. Once I wash it, it'll shrink in a little bit and be a little less ripply. I mean, not the fabric shrink, but the stitching will tighten up. I think that's pretty cool. I've got a few more minutes. I'll start on one of the bodies. Okay, so we set the hood aside. And then I've got the front and back bodice pieces, which have all the little sectioned arm bits in them. It's definitely a different way than I usually assemble shirts, so hopefully I don't mess it up. The way that you attach the sleeve is basically the same, except for you're not going to be going all the way around at the shoulder. So you're going to be, in order to get that shaping around the arm, it's sort of like a concave against a convex. And the way that this pattern maker has done it is she's made the beginning of the sleeve the opposite. And it's a lot easier that way to start your seam. So I'm just going to clip it right there. And as long as you don't stretch and you just go, slowly through, it'll line right up. At least I assume it will. So we clip the top and the bottom. And she does notch points and stuff, but I just make sure that I'm not stretching it. I've never had a problem. Make sure everything's lined up. And we're just doing faces toward each other, like anything that's going to be turned. Just line everything up here as we go. So we've got the front piece of the sleeve there, and there's the shoulder side. We're going to do both front pieces, and then we have this stripe trim just like we had on the part here. And she had us going with the stretch, but mine is a 4-directional stretch. It stretches both ways, like the same amount. So I'm not worried about it. I wanted to have the stripe go downward. It might shrink a little uneven, but I think it'll look really nice. For hers, it would have had to be this part, and I didn't have yardage of the stripe to do that, nor does it really necessary when you have a 4-directional, or 2-directional, I guess. When you have it, you know, the stripe that'll go in every direction, so I wasn't worried about it. But between the two pieces, that's going to then be sewn just all the way from the neck down to the side, so that the stripe goes all the way up to the hood, rather than just being, you know, shoulder to shoulder like I usually do. I thought that was neat too. Something different. Different sectioning. Again, faces to faces. And she had all of her pieces numbered and everything, all the pattern pieces lettered. So if you're new to it, it would be really easy for you to piece together the pattern. But if you're experienced, you just kind of cut the pieces and it's pretty apparent where they go. I did make sure to read through the process though, just to make sure I was doing it right, because I wouldn't want to do it, you know, even if it worked out the same, I would want to do it her way to make sure that her way, you know, is easy for people to follow. I felt like such a noob, like signing on to be a pattern tester when I've never even used like a pattern like that before. And I'm definitely not like a super experienced seamstress. Like I mean, I guess I'm experienced. I don't have a lot of techniques. Like I always kind of just wing things. So I tend to not know the names of stitches or the names of techniques because I didn't learn that way. So there's the whole front piece. And that is so quick, I could even do the back piece, huh? Maybe I'll attach a stripe. I cut the stripe length to the amount of fabric that I had. I didn't have a lot of it, so it might not line up exactly. I might have to trim the sleeves a little shorter, but I did check against my son's existing shirts to make sure that his shirts had the enough length, even without that it would still fit. I didn't want to risk not having enough length of the stripe, and It's not as much as her pattern calls for, but it is still enough even hemmed for his stuff to match. Making sure I have this cut right. Did I cut these wrong? No, I didn't. I did it okay. So we start at the top of the shoulder. God, I really feel like I cut this wrong. Doesn't look like it lines up correctly. So weird. No, it's right. It just looked wrong. Okay. She also doesn't do her neck curves the same way that I do mine. So that's a little bit of like, it's warping my sense of it because the neck angle on hers is different. Like she has her shoulders wrapped around the front, which mine don't do. And she has her neck really square, and I keep my neck more rounded. So it's throwing me for a little bit of a loop when I start working around the neck. I'm like, this doesn't look right, but it's fine. It's how it's supposed to be. It is how it's supposed to be. I'm not messing anything up yet, except for that hood, but that didn't matter. It was just a liner. What time is it? We're still good. A couple more minutes. Should be able to finish this one side of the sleeve. And then I need to get this finished sewing tonight so I can post pictures and be done with this phase. I think it's a 3-phase testing, and this is phase 2, I think. I don't remember. I think that's right. I think that's good enough. Not going to bother all the way down. Okay, so line up the neck. Don't stretch, just line it up as you go. And then if you were doing it just as a long sleeve shirt, you would just add your neck trim. But since I'm doing the hood, I would add the hood instead. They're added the same way though. You just overlap the front of the hood a little bit. Although I do like the hooded shirts that have that little triangle for reinforcement at the front so that the hood is cut a little bit longer and then overlaps and then is sewn into a little triangle. It's more durable, I found, but since I'm just doing her pattern, it doesn't have that. But if I was going to do my own, I think I would add that. Especially on a kid's shirt, because kids are not nice to their clothes. They need like that extra durability. And I think for this, I'll take the time to also top stitch along the stripe like I did on the hood. I just think it'll look more finished that way, plus it won't be as rough on the inside. And my kid's kind of a sensory kid, so I think he'd appreciate that. But also, if you were using a cover stitch machine, you could do that. look at that, see what that looks like. And that's probably where we'll stop it today. So, got our just, I love the gray and the black. Got our stripe down the shoulder, all the way. On the outside edge, it'll be above the shoulder. And the way she has it cut is she has the front piece of the sleeve a little smaller than the back, so it's more on the top of the arm. It doesn't end up rolling behind, which is really nice. And then I'm just going to top stitch that down so that it looks a little more intentional. And then I set it up so that the black stripe will show up right down the middle. Even though it would be awesome if this was like dark gray, light gray, black, dark gray, light gray, but it's at least the black's in the middle, so that'll work really nice. And I did the same thing with the hood. I had it so that there's two stripes because it's a wider stripe here. And it looks pretty nice. I'll be both arms, and then after I've put the faces together on the shirt, I'll add the hood, and then I will serge down from wrist to body and hem in the insides. The rest is really simple. I mean, it's all really simple. It's just sectioning things together. Sometimes things are a lot of steps and take a while, but it's not like it's any harder. It's just more steps. So you can break it up over multiple days. You could, you know, batch do a bunch of sleeves and then do a bunch of, you know, bodies, or do your cutting one day and your sewing another day. Don't overwhelm yourself, obviously. It's not difficult. It's no different steps. It's just, you know, more of them. You know, diaper sewing versus clothing sewing, it's all the same. Anyway, hopefully that wasn't super boring. It was probably pretty boring. But I'm gonna go and muck the chicken coop now. Super exciting. And I will see you guys probably at least for a little bit next week, but I'll just be doing it from my laptop. And I won't be sewing because I'm gonna be gone. And then I'll be back to doing something the following week. Let me know what you're interested in. So happy sewing! Turn this off. There we go.